Well, what I did find myself doing was thinking, my God, life is so precious. Lots of people got in touch with me and I with other people early on in the lockdown, and you could really feel this desire for people to reassert, connection that they were missing. We were all missing the relationships, and we didn't know what was going on. Life was so unsettled. The future still is. Future still uncertain, and human beings not good at dealing with that. And that seemed to me to this lockdown sent me right back to the other one, where at 9 years old, with far less experience of life, you were dealing with the same thing from almost literally out of a clear blue sky. Life changes so completely that you now have to, as a child, try and navigate some kind of enforced, adult world that no longer makes any sense. So there was something about also feeling time is so precious. If I don't tell this story now, when will I tell it? Especially if I think that now it might actually mean something to more people than just me. Well, they were very surprised because I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I just literally went away, and 3 months later, my missus knew I was going to a shed in the garden every day. That's all she knew. I wouldn't tell her what it was. And I thought, my own promise to myself was that I would write it and that might be enough. Then I wrote it and I thought, well, I wonder what Bill and Joyce would make of this, because I can't make it if they don't like it. And they had a very emotional reaction. My brother particularly said it took him right back to all sorts of other stories. He claimed some of the things I said happened to me really happened to him, and then I told him some stories that he also we imagined what the other one was doing. Somehow it reminded me that was all what memory does, beautiful blurs. But he filled in a lot of material for me, and that was helpful. And my sister said that. And I didn't really even recognize myself in either half of this remark, but which shows how unaware I am, unself-aware. But she said, for a very quiet, private individual, you've really put yourself out there, haven't you? I said, but I'm an actor, I'm not remotely private. She said, yeah, no, but that's where you hide. You hide in all of those parts and that thing, but the rest of the time you shut up and you keep yourself pretty much to yourself. So this was a big surprise to her. But they both felt that it went beyond the narrow confines of our little family experience, and that there was some recognition to be had. So they gave it their blessing, and indeed they both appear in the film very briefly. So that was a very. There's a scene right at the beginning where my brother Bill is carrying a box with Lewis McCaskey, who plays Will, Buddy's brother in the film. So that was nice. And I remember that morning when they were doing that, Lewis just spent the entire morning asking him sort of actor research questions. I certainly think that this acknowledgement of where you come from, and also really, for better or worse, what your creative DNA is made up of. I wanted to go back and sort of reconnect with, I would say, the free and playful imagination of that 9-year-old before the Troubles. That kid who watched movies and saw westerns on TV and was lit up by storytelling coming out of the screen or occasionally coming from the stage. And I felt as though one impact of the Troubles and my experience of it was that they put you on red alert. They made you become very guarded, I think. And I think that is a legacy that finds its way into your personality. Back to what my sister was saying, I didn't particularly think I was protected or guarded, but I come to think that I have been, and that in a way, by contrast with the absolute certainty of the identity that one had back then, in a big family where you had your place, in a big community where everybody knew you and you knew everybody, that there was a sort of ease in the way you approached the world that was lost on that day in the summer of 1969. And although I don't wish to go back in a sort of sentimental, infantilized kind of way, I'm grateful to acknowledge that all of that's what's made me, and that it's a surprise to me, as it might be to other people who might imagine I trotted out of some academic institution with a big, thick volume of Shakespeare under my arm and a kind of degree in classics. Quite the opposite, as you can tell, and it's quite liberating, cathartic. I'm not sure, but it's certainly liberating to feel as though, as a friend of mine said, you've outed yourself. Most certainly, because it seems to me to characterize what you've just been talking about, Irishness, but also the resilience of many people on these islands, in dealing with dark times. It's also overwhelming. We're at a period in our lives where, the noise, despite the digital possibility of communicating in a million different ways, we don't always make sense to each other. And certainly in terms of politics, the world is polarized and we've become tribal and very defensive in our communications. Back then, when overwhelmed, someone said to me when they saw an early version of the script, you should put more politics in it. And I said, well, what do you mean by politics? Do you mean middle-aged men in suits on television talking? Because I think back then, that's what we couldn't get past. We needed to try and find ways we couldn't understand that. We got the brains seized up as we tried to work out, how do we reclaim our street? How do we deal with now having a barricade at either end and you've got to sign in to get in and get out? Well, it's going to have to start with whatever makes us laugh for the next minute or so, or is there a chance of an ad hoc party? Has someone got a new record? Is there a song to be had? What are the moments of joy that you can grab? What's the absurdity that sometimes you find even funnier because, of course, it lives side by side with this intense fear. Everybody's on code red. They're on high alert. But I guess those sharpened senses make you very aware of, what is funny in life, and every single burst of that joy would be a kind of restorative step in the right direction. It was like nothing else. It was, Jamie Dornan said, and I agree with him, he said it was one of the most memorable nights of his life. Forget about your sort of professional life. We had 1,400 people, an electrifying atmosphere. You talked about the Brighton cinema being filled up. 1,400 people to watch a movie on a massive screen. And Universal came in and did an amazing job at the waterfront, which is largely and essentially a music venue, and they made the sound work in a gangbusters way. The image was huge, and it seemed like half the audience were Jamie Dornan's family and the rest belonged to Kieran Hines or me. But of course, it wasn't quite like that. Patrick Keelty did an amazing introduction and then did a Q&A which was full of laughter and tears. We dedicated the evening to the late Jim Dornan, Jamie's dad. There was an immense sense of pride there, and we celebrated a ton of other movies that were in the festival. The real sense of community in a place that acknowledged its bruises and its heartbreak, but that is always looking for that ray of hope, that sort of a horizon, and is also now proud. This is the home of Game of Thrones and so many other, Line of Duty and a million other things that make the place proud as a creator of work on screen. We're partly helped by Northern Ireland Screen. Everything about it felt like the country was watching that night. It felt like the whole of Northern Ireland was in the building, and and there was because it's Northern Ireland, an even number of Catholic and Protestant MPs, and from every and the Secretary of State was there. It was a big deal, highly emotional night. Van Morrison was there. It was really marvelous. They all leapt to their feet at the end, and the biggest cheer of the night came on when 10-year-old Jude Hill took to the stage. It was really a beautiful moment. He and 300 other boys submitted their self-tapes, and he then went through 4 or 5 rounds of Zooming with our casting directors, then a bit of Zooming with me, and then I met him in Belfast on a Saturday morning, a wet Saturday morning, with Lewis McCaskey, who ended up playing his brother, and we improvised a bit. And no, it wasn't instant, but what you knew was that there was a very natural quality. He was an Irish dancer. He'd done that for 4 or 5 years, as young as he was, and he had discipline, and he had assurance. He knew about performing, and he wasn't thrown by waiting around, as he's done for many competitions and things. And very solid family background, loving mother and father who were very, very nice. And one just had the sense that he was a great listener. We knew that half the film would play on his face reacting to what was going on around him. And I thought, if I can shoot this in a way that has us rehearse as little as possible. I mean, to give you an example, when Jude Hill in this film sees as Buddy the clips from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, you are watching him react to the very first time he has ever seen anything from that movie. So he was gobsmacked. And next to Judi Dench, who was tickling him and whispering in his ear, and he was reacting with a sort of delirium that we capture. We see it, and it's the delirium of new chapters of life being written on the face of a 9-10-year-old, and that sense of the world opening up in him and on his features was critical to try and capture, and he stayed honest and true in the middle of that. Didn't suddenly start trying to be an actor. What he was always trying to do and succeeded in was being present, listening, really listening, and watching very carefully the masters like Dench, at work. Well, there is a story to be told, I think. For now, I think I'm at that stage with the film where it has been quite the big personal journey, and it's a thrill that it's out there and people are responding, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from people's accounts of their own childhoods and their own families and everything, and it certainly gives me a lot of food for thought. I think maybe there is a story there. I guess I'll have to move quickly to make sure I catch Jude Hill before he gets too old and before he gets too expensive.